Good evening. Welcome to The Hardest Game. My name is Ben Doughty, and if you don't know me already, I'm a boxing coach, author, and general social media mouthpiece on all matters fistic. I was hoping to be joined this evening, and still am hoping to be joined at some point this evening, by my erstwhile sidekick, Gary Stretch, formerly of Sugar, Silk, and Stretch. But he's not here right now. I'm not going to hang around. I see I got a few people already in the house, so I thought we'd start without further ado. And if Gary wants to come in, that's fine. Please bear in mind when I don't have a co-anchor to bounce off, I consider it enormously helpful if you guys continue to ask me questions or to put in your opinion, your 2 cents, so I can bounce off of that. Because basically, you become my co-hosts and co-presenters, and I'm talking to you instead of just reading a monologue, which I've never felt comfortable with. How's it going? It's Mr. Jab and Grab. It's been a little while, I think, since I've seen that handle on YouTube. Good to see you, mate. There's Ellen Bromson who left this comment before we started, which is great. So if Gary comes in, then let's let him come in as and when. I spoke to Gary earlier, and I know that he had a forthright opinion on the big fight in Riyadh last night, the rematch between Alexander Usyk, still reigning undeniable world heavyweight champion, and Tyson Fury, who some people thought, including himself, some people thought was rather unlucky not to level the score at one victory apiece last night. It never ceases to amaze me how divisive these decisions are, because you have some people saying Fury was robbed as usual, and we know perhaps it's a cliche, it's an overused term. Do fight fans entirely fully understand the true anatomy of a genuine highway robbery these days, or do they just use that disparaging term to approximate any fight where they didn't quite agree with the official decision? Jab and Grab, I love it. A question already, because honestly, I'm good at talking to somebody on screen. I find it's a lot harder to talk to nobody and just address an audience that you can't see. So I really value, normally in the flow, you can't get every question in, but tonight, the more the merrier. Question: do you think this was a worse version of Fury than the first fight? No, I don't, Mr. Jab and Grab. I thought he was better this time. I think he'd had a better preparation, a better camp, because he wasn't dealing with the cuts and the lack of sparring and the worry around that. I thought Fury got, definitely it was an adjustment performance. I think obviously he knew what he was up against at this point better than ever, and he did make certain adjustments, but perhaps ultimately not successfully enough. And you may feel there's other things he needed to do which weren't addressed. But I think Fury stood his ground more this time. His jab was noticeably more effective. People think that the southpaw, a good southpaw, we tend to think it nullifies your left jab as an orthodox. Whereas Fury's jab was actually noticeably and perhaps even surprisingly effective last night. He was doubling it, he was tripling it, he was turning it into a left hook sometimes, with some degree of success. Jab and Grab says, I think the weight made him look slower. Yeah, I mean, certainly. I've just done another podcast for something called Blast Fit Boxing with a guy called Matthew Hirsch and a guy called Mark Fitzsimmons, and we had Frank Greaves, who's a reasonably well-connected London trainer, on, and he said, no way did Fury need to be heavier. He said, it's silly. When you gas out last time, he said, the last thing you need is to come in even heavier. He said, because one thing Usyk is an expert at with his ring generalship is that he's great at making a guy like that move around, a 20-stone behemoth. He's great at making him work all the time. Even when Usyk's not punching, he's making him move, and he's making him expend energy. So Frank Groove said he definitely shouldn't have been as heavy as he was. We know the official weight was 281 pounds that Fury weighed in. At the ceremonial weigh-in, wearing lots of layers of clothes, trousers, shoes, I think probably leather jacket, whatever layers he had underneath. We don't really know what he weighed, do we? We really don't know what he weighed, because there's such a smokescreen, really. I think if heavyweights are going to weigh in, why don't they weigh in boxer shorts, or just shorts or whatever, even if it's shorts and a t-shirt or something. Otherwise, you wonder what the point of that exercise is, given the fact that it's an essentially spurious ritual anyhow, because heavyweights don't actually need to weigh in. So it's a curiosity for us, isn't it? And we tend to infer how effective a guy's going to be based on how hard he's trained, how well he's prepared, and also the juxtaposition of the weights together, how much of an effect that might have on a fight, and the kind of game plan someone's planning. That with heavyweights, that's what all the intrigue is based around. But Did you see who watched what? I watched TNT Sports version last night. I bought the pay per view, which is quite unusual for me, because we all do a bit of streaming, I think, don't we? But I bought it last night. I don't know what one you guys watched, whether you watched the Zone or whether you watched Sky Sports. If you watched TNT like I did, what you will have noticed is that Steve Bunce and Carl Frampton were both extremely distressed. By the weight of Fury and how high his shorts were. Steve Bunt said it almost looks like a comedy pair of shorts. Like, remember when 70s comedians like Les Dawson used to dress as boxers for a gag? He said he looked like that. So Frampton said he is not going to be able to do what he needs to do. He said if he doesn't end this fight in 3 rounds, he's not going to have the staying power because look at the state of him. They both said that they actually both disowned their predictions. I think Frampton certainly did, based on the physical look of Fury in the dressing room. Which you know what I think Fury actually his conditioning was decent last night. I thought he lasted. I thought Fury maintained a decent pace to the 12th round. Quite honestly, in my opinion, says Jab Grab. I don't see where he goes next. I don't think the Joshua fight is attractive at this point, and it's a battle of the losers. Do you know what, Jab and Grab? I totally salute you for that because to me, you're a man of taste to say that. Because other people say, "Oh, we still want to see it, don't we? It will still sell, and I'm not going to begrudge them another 50 million quid each." I mean, I'm not going to begrudge them any money they want. I wouldn't mind a bit of it filtering my way at some point, other than the tiny payments I get from YouTube and Facebook. They're a bit better on Facebook, but more about that never. Um, but I agree with you, Mr. Jab and Grab. I think it's irrelevant. I don't think we should be talking about Anthony Joshua in any mega fight right now. Fury, yeah, he's paid his dues. I do think he was a bit hard done by last night, insofar as I was surprised that decision was unanimous and it was as wide as it was. It was as clear as it was. 116, 112, right? That doesn't mean it was a rout. It doesn't mean that there was a huge margin of dominance. It just means one guy had the preponderance of the action in what might have been competitive rounds all the way through 8 of them, through 2/3 of the action. But I was really surprised, to be honest with you. I watched it with a good friend last night and I wasn't scoring because I was in a kind of social relaxed situation and I didn't have my scoring head on, but I did watch it attentively. And I thought, I was really surprised that wasn't a controversial close decision. I'm really surprised the judges weren't split in their opinion. And just for it to be a unanimous decision, no arguments, identical scorecards, that really surprised me. You saw what Frank Warren thought of it, didn't you? Frank Warren said that was despicable, that was ridiculous. Tyson Fury at the post-fight press conference said, for the rest of my life, till the day I die, I will know I won that fight. And I believe he believes that. And some people said, oh, he's a liar. No, he's not a liar. He believes he won. You could see at the end of the fight, he thought he won. He was standing on the rope. He had his arms aloft, right? Fury thinks he won the fight. As it turns out, he didn't. And I don't have a problem with that. And listen, when I do sit down and score it, I tried to score it today, but I've been busy all day. I watched the first 4 rounds again this morning before I had to run out the door and get on with my day. And I had it 2-1-1 in Fury's favour after 4 rounds. And obviously, I've got 8 rounds to go. I will update you on that. What are you guys saying? Joshua versus Wilder was well overdue. It was Kung Kao. Am I saying your name right? I think your name is pronounced Kung Kao. It'd be good if you could get on Facebook, mate, because then you'll be able to message me and get the answers to some of the questions which you may not have properly had yet. Do I still run the historical boxing tours? Yes, I do. If you want to get in touch with me, or want a phone number, I can do that if you get yourself on Facebook. Yes, Joshua Wilder was basically the fight that went begging, because that's the problem. In this day and age, when until the Turkey Al Sheikh intervention, we were obsessed with building and marinating fights till past their sell-by date, past their shelf life, we lost a few fights in that process because either one or both fighters got beat or something else went wrong. Fight was close, but I edged it to Usyk, says Jab and Grab. Got to give it to Usyk. He finds a way to maintain his work rate towards the championship rounds. He does. He's a remarkable machine, Jab and Grab. And Usyk, Fury was busier. We know that, and the punch stats also support that. If you believe either strongly or marginally in punch stats, then the punch stats support that. One figure that Adam Catterall quoted on Twitter was that he said, okay, Fury out threw, as in threw more punches than Usyk in it, 11 of the 12 rounds, but he only outlanded him in one. He said, so anybody who thinks Fury won, you're basing it on your optics. You're not basing it on a more clinical analysis of what actually happened, in terms of where the punches landing, where the punches being deflected. To me, Usyk was the puncher in that fight again. Physically, he didn't look ever worried by Fury's bulk, size, power, nothing. And whenever he cut loose, whenever he opened up, Usyk always looked the more impressive. He always looked like the better fighter and the more dangerous fighter. Having said that, I thought Fury did a good job of nullifying some of Usyk's advantages and some of his strong points to the point where I really do need to score it, fellas, because I can't talk with it, and I never do talk with any ultimate authority until I've scored it. But Fury was better than he was last time. I'm all right. Last time, some people had him up 5-2 after 7 rounds, and I did think he was starting to beat Usyk down or beat him up. But we know what happened after that, and nobody was really arguing with Usyk's victory on the first occasion. This time they are split. This time they really are split. Eddie Hearn said he had it a draw. I believe he had it 6-5 going into the last round in Tyson's favour. He must have given the 12th round to Usyk, as I believe all the judges did. So Eddie Hearn had it a draw. I believe Bob Arum said he had it for Fury, but then there was a professional relationship and potential bias there. I heard Oscar De La Hoya thought Fury won it, but that's not what he said to Boxing News. He was talking Usyk upside. Maybe Oscar has different views depending on who he's talking to. Adrian Knott, evening Ben. The AI judge was well off the mark regarding the score. You know what, Adrian? That's why I called this. You'll probably figure this one out. I called this criminal intelligence as a kind of little wry aside in the direction of the artificial intelligence. I mean, based on first testing usage, it doesn't inspire confidence, does it? But some people are telling me, no, Ben, you're a dinosaur. AI is better than having humans corrupt and fallible as they are inevitably. And they were saying if you take emotion out of it, maybe Usyk did win by 6 points, 118-12. I very much doubt my scorecard will tally with that when I get around to watching it tomorrow, hopefully, because obviously you don't want to let it go too past its sell by date to the point where I end up coming out with some opinion next week when things have fizzled out a little bit. I thought that Tony Bellew was ahead during the Alexander Usyk fight initially. Bellew gassed out trying to concentrate, and Usyk pounced on him. He lulls his opponents into a false sense of security. Yeah, because you know what, Kung? Sometimes you can see a fighter knows exactly what he's doing. Who was it who said? I think it was. I can't remember who was it. I can't know if it was Frank Greaves who just said it, or whether it was actually one of the pundits last night. But he said Usyk doesn't mind losing a round. He doesn't mind losing 2 rounds. He doesn't even mind losing 3 rounds if he has to, because he knows what it's taken out of his opponent to actually go through that process. And he always seems to finish stronger. He always seems to find another gear when he needs it. He's close to a perfect fighter, isn't he? I mean, I think he lacks a little bit of X Factor flair for my kind of really kind of heart, to be a man after a fighter after my own heart in the man of a Sugar Ray Leonard or a Muhammad Ali, for instance. But he has that heart. He has the chin. He has the IQ. He has the ring generalship. He has the speed. He has the reflexes. He's got the boxing brain. He's got the style. He's got the movement and footwork. Usyk is one hell of a fighter. Quite how much he has left to do in the game now, how much he wants to achieve, and how much more money he thinks he might need to secure, what must already be generational wealth, one would think. I don't know. You saw Daniel Dubois get in the ring last night immediately and issue a challenge to Usyk for a rematch based on the controversy which marked their first fight back in Poland, which I believe was it 2022? I think it was. And I think that pissed Tyson Fury off, didn't it? I think the fact that Dubois came in to steal that moment and make his grandstand in the wake of Usyk's victory, I believe there was speculation amongst the TNT team, the media team, that Fury had left the ring because he was pissed off that Usyk and Dubois were locked into that situation. Frank Warren too. I mean, Frank Warren was very vehement about the judges being wrong, and to say that Fury only I'm trying to think what he said. Of the last 8 rounds, he was saying Fury was adjudged to have run a ridiculously small preponderance of the last 8 rounds, and he said that can't possibly be right. But other people are saying you should have gone to Specsavers, Frank. It never stops, does it? The people. What's weird is I've seen right today at least 4 people say, I'm an Usyk man. I don't like Tyson Fury. I predicted Usyk, but I thought Fury won, including Leroy Nicholas, who's one of my boys, but he hates Tyson Fury with a comical passion. He is literally dogging him at his every turn in terms of any chance to criticize the man and to try and distance himself as a boxing person from what he regards as a man so horribly lacking in class and refinement. It's a tragedy that he has come to represent the richest prize in sport for a hefty part of this modern era. He hates it, but he said he had a few sherbets last night, but he says he thinks Fury won. Now that's a major display of character for Leroy to even admit that, because he could have hid behind his man's victory, and he actually had the honesty and integrity to say I thought Fury won. But my point here is I've spoken to a few Usyk men who predicted him and wanted him to win, who think Fury won. So and I get that, and I've spoke to a few people who said I wanted Fury to win, but no, sorry, he didn't do enough. Usyk won the fight fair and square like he did last time. What I don't get is the people who say, I don't understand why it was. There was no controversy at all. I don't understand how anybody could think Fury won that. To me, that's a step too far. Gary Stretch, who's supposed to be on here but hasn't made it tonight, he told me there's no way Usyk won it. He's convinced there's no way in the world Usyk won it. So I think at some point, as ego driven and as passionate and as knowledgeable as we think we are, and many of us do, I think we need to accept that. I hate to admit it almost, because I wish there should be more a way, the truth, and the light than this. But I think we're going to have to accept that people do see fights differently. As lame and as unhelpful as that revelation is, like, let's agree to differ. I think at some point we have to acknowledge the fact that we don't see the same things going on in that ring. And quite Frank Warren is an objective. That's quite right, Kimco. I don't dislike Fury, but he hit the ceiling against Usyk. How do you see Usyk Dubois rematch? Adrian Knott says. I would expect it's a good question, because I would expect Usyk to win a rematch without the controversy, because I don't see any signs that Usyk is noticeably slowing down. I believe, unlike Tyson Fury, from what I've been led to believe over the last several years, Usyk is that monkishly dedicated athlete. He was supposedly, after the first fight back in May the 18th this year, Usyk was in the gym the next day before he got on the plane, apparently working on his mistakes, which is crazy. I would never do that, for instance, on anything. If I performed in that kind of if I can't relate it to anything I've ever done, but if I'd had any serious night where something was required of me, that kind of effort, I wouldn't be training on whatever it was the next day before I caught an aeroplane. I'd be relaxing and chilling out and enjoying the victory. So that is, if that's true, that is a level of that is a kind of level of humble dedication, which is quite staggering. Fury, on the other hand, we know about. He's been it's well documented problems with drink and drugs and inactivity and depression and all the rest of it. So I would expect Usyk to beat Dubois if they fought again without the controversy. Having said that, Dubois has come of age. He's been increasingly well seasoned because he's fought tough opposition. Iron sharpens iron, as the axiom states. So, I still think I would back Usyk to beat Dubois quite simply if they fought again, and possibly by stoppage again. How do you see? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had Dubois beating Joshua. That was widely overlooked prior to the fight. Yeah, you picked that one well, Kong. I mean, I thought Joshua, because this is the thing, isn't it? People are saying now that Fury and Joshua is the next logical commercial option because they both lost their last, big mega fights, and it's still a matchup which is going to be eternally saleable to the British public, the British boxing fan public, and consequently, that's the fight they should make, and it would still make them a whole, several gazillion more pounds each. But I must admit, I'm personally not interested. It doesn't do it for me. I can see, to be quite honest, I think that is the direction they probably will go in each camp. Steve Bunt suggested that Usyk could fight that Fury could fight Usyk again. He said, all right, he's lost twice, but they've been compelling fights. They've been close. There seems to be a question mark or an asterisk over this one, as far as some people are concerned, at least, even if the Usyk brigade, who can't see it, don't want to admit it. But I don't expect to see Fury and Usyk fight ever again, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if Tyson Fury, I think his heart would have been broken to some extent by to bring what he did last night and still not get his hand held up. And I don't think he was robbed, absolutely not. But to not get his hand held up, I'm not sure he would have the stomach to get ready to fight Usyk again next time out. I think the Dubois and Fury is an option, isn't it? I mean, I don't endorse Daniel Dubois' status as a reigning heavyweight champion of the world in any sense whatsoever, because the reigning heavyweight champion of the world and was announced by Michael Buffer last night as the universally recognised undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. You can't have it both ways. I mean, I know Michael Buffer was also announcing AJ and Dubois as being for the heavyweight championship of the world when he worked at Wembley in September. But he knows, and he said it to the world last night, Alexander Usyk, as he's come to the ring, is the universally recognised, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So if Fury fought Dubois, to me, I'm going to live in my ivory tower or take my ostrich-like view of the sanctioning bodies. To me, it's just a decent fight between good British heavyweights. One who perhaps has seen better days, and the other one who is in the prime of his life and has come into his own and shook the hell out of the reigning heavyweight champion of the world, even if he did need a low blow to do it. That controversy will probably rage on. Talk to Russ Amber, one of Alexander Usyk's team. Was that a low blow? You cannot be asking me that question in all seriousness. Of course it was a low blow. You mentioned it to Don Charles. He gets just as passionate and goes, Usyk is a cheat. And how can he claim to be a man of God when he is a cheat? But don't you just love it? Boxing, you have to love it. Because people are so passionate and they will swear white is black and vice versa. Um, but that's what I suspect. I don't know where either of them goes from here. Usyk could hang them up now, and he would have an almost flawless legacy. He will go down as one of the greatest fighters, certainly of the last 20 or 30 years. You might regard him as the greatest cruiserweight ever, or you might prefer Evander Holyfield for that particular mantle. It comes down certainly to a straight race between the two of them, bearing in mind it's something of a young division and has only been around since 1980. Is Alexander Usyk one of the greatest heavyweights of all time? My gut feeling right now, without a little more time for the whole question to marinate, I tend to say no. I don't really, in all good conscience, I can't put Alexander Usyk up there with the likes of immortals like Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis, Rocky Marciano, Larry Holmes, and Mike Tyson. I don't think beating Anthony Joshua twice, Tyson Fury twice, and Daniel Dubois and Derek Chisora is a serious resume to contend with those kind of giants of the heavyweight division and the kings of the ring. So, but I do think Alexander Usyk is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Don't forget he was an elite amateur of several hundred fights as well. And how's it going, by the way, Bruce? All good. I thought Gary was going to be here, as I say, but I'll be honest with you guys. I like doing this on my own. I do enjoy it because I don't have to fit in with everybody else. And I find this ability to just maintain a soliloquy is actually okay these days. It takes a bit of practice. Normally, you want someone to bounce off because if you've got much experience at doing this, it's a lot harder just to talk to a screen. But I don't mind it now. How's it going, Gary Rickard? So no, in answer to my own question, which I imagine was a question that you might have asked, Usyk, one of the greatest fighters of the last 20 or 30 years. You might say he's one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world today. He has been on that kind of unofficial list at number one at times, and other times he's been replaced in the public opinion, court of public opinion and fashion, by Terence Crawford or Naoya Inoue or Canelo Alvarez and so on. But maybe the greatest cruiserweight of all time, or if he's not, he'd be Mr. Number Two. Greatest heavyweights of all time. I'm not particularly comfortable with inserting him into that conversation just now, and I don't have to just now. I can have the perspective of 20 years if I want. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and also if you look at the impression he has left on the game, he's left such a wonderful and positive impression because the man is class personified. Lest you accuse him of being boringly classy and decent, he's actually quite quirky, and he has that edge because of sartorially he's great, isn't he? What do you think of the get-up he wore last night as he came into the ring? He didn't drop any fashion points on his way to the ring, did he? So Alexander Usyk, wonderful character, wonderful fighter. How much longer does he need to do it? And who's he going to fight? Who's he going to do it against? The Dubois fight works, and that would be fitting and poetic in a way because let's say he fights Dubois again and he beats him, he gets his IBF title back, which he loaned to him in the first place anyway. Then he can retire. That would be quite fitting, would it not? It would be nice to clear up that issue. Or better yet, suppose Dubois pulls off what would be a fairly major upset and beats Alexander Usyk this time. Well, then what a crowning glory that would be. Then I can call him a world heavyweight champion with no reservation whatsoever. And it's a bit of a shame for Usyk, in terms of legacy. It wouldn't be a devastating blow because he's already done too much to put him in to make it, to put him in jeopardy just because he might lose his last fight. Like a lot of great champions did do, and then some. But that is why maybe the Dubois fight makes sense. But let's not forget, Dubois has got to get past Joseph Parker on February 22nd first. You're a good wordsmith. You can run it alone. Yes, I appreciate that, Kunkao. Yes. Yeah, it's like I say, it's a practice thing. If he really wants legacy, he should fight Zhang, Parker, and rematch Dubois. But that's only happened in the good old. It only happened in the good old days. You're right, Bruce. And you know what? Part of the reason is because the schedule, the itinerary that you just outlined, Bruce. That you know how long that takes today, because you know how long it takes between fights and how long it takes them to build a fight. Do you remember everybody was losing it because they thought Israel Madrimov was intending to fight Serhii Bokhachuk, who boxed Ishmael Davis last night, by the way, as I'm sure you know, and then he was going to fight Virgil Ortiz in February, right? That's what they thought he was going to do. And they said, God, my God, props to him. Is he really going to fight Bokhachuk on December 21st? And then 8 weeks later, 2 months later, is he really going to fight Virgil Ortiz Jr.? And people were talking like he was an old school kind of Harry Greb, Sam Langford level of legend just for doing that. As you know by now, presumably, he didn't do it because he pulled out with some kind of virus, right? He pulled out with a condition. I don't know if it was influenza or whatever it was, or bronchitis, something like that, wasn't it? So he's not doing that. I'm not being cynical or skeptical about the source, about his illness, but he didn't do it. Now, what you just outlined, Bruce, it will take too long for Usyk, who's already 37, cracking on 38. It's kind of obvious that really anyone who's 37 is cracking on 38, just like the way I'm 54, cracking on 55. I mean, anybody who is one age is always vaguely coming near to the next number. But at 37, pushing 38, it would take him too long to fight Zhang, Parker, and Dubois. And then how old's he going to be when he gets to the end of that? It's one of those things. If Parker might beat Dubois, like I say, Parker seems to be having an Indian summer in his career at the minute. Dubois has matured and I think he has the confidence and the man strength and the maturity now. So he's a rough package these days. Parker Dubois is a really good fight, isn't it? On a really good bill. We got that to look forward to February 22nd. You got the Bivol Beterbiev rematch, and you've got a whole bunch of other great fights on the show. Bruce, add Kabayel and Bacoli to that list. Yeah, and he's easily top 10. We've got some good heavyweight contenders, haven't we? I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about Moses Itama, who annihilated Dempsey McKean in the chief support, I believe it was last night. But I really like that kid. I'm really high on him. I think he's got so much going for him. He's got a great temperament. He's a major talent. He's not a world class heavyweight yet, but he's a world class talent. I don't have any reservations about that. I know how it is today, but I can fantasize exactly that, Bruce. I mean, let's say we are in a transitional phase of boxing history. We have to be because we have the Turkey El Sheikh moves. I heard he bought 13% of DAZN or an agency which represents him the other day. We know about the Ring magazine, which was relaunched this week amongst the whole hullabaloo and fanfare of the show. it's been a major impact in a very short space of time. Don't forget, this time last year we got the Day of Judgment. Was it Day of Reckoning? Day of Reckoning, I think they called the card, where you had Joshua, Wallin, Wilder, and Parker, and all those other fights. It's hard to remember them sometimes because it all blurs into one kind of fight fan um, extravaganza to some extent. But we had the big show, the first of these big shows we had this time last year. Fast forward 12 months, and we've seen an awful lot, haven't we? And he's had such a resounding impact on everything with buying the Ring magazine, relaunching the Ring magazine as a paper thing. He bought Michael Benson's Twitter. How many of you guys followed Michael Benson's Twitter page, which I must admit was a go-to for all the one-stop shop boxing news of the day? Any rumours or quotes I wanted, without feeling like I was blatantly plagiarising the fella, I would visit his page 4 or 5 times a day just to see what was pulsing. Wasn't my only source, as some idiot suggested at one point. And don't forget, I've actually been around a whole lot longer than Michael Benson, doing my thing chiefly on Facebook. So, I've seen Michael Benson's come and go, although they had hundreds of thousands more followers than I ever had. But I would visit Michael Benson's page a lot, but Turkey bought it and then left it dormant for like a week. And so he started posting on it now. He rebranded it Ring Magazine, but he bought it off Michael Benson because Michael Benson had 300,000 odd followers, and it was the go-to source for any boxing news of any sort. And if you were looking to confirm a rumor or whatever else it might be, if Benson hadn't posted it, the chances are that it wasn't happening. As often as not, occasionally you would beat him to the punch if you're in that business of boxing reportage online, but normally you wouldn't do. So Turkey's bought a Ring magazine. He's calling the shots of who fights who. He's got Benson's Twitter account and all the rest of it. Turkey bringing us the best I've ever seen, and I've been a fan since the 70s. Yeah, it's like those Don King cards. You remember, Bruce? People spoke fondly of the Don King stacked cards of the 1990s, really. That was when King really moved into his own with these massive promotions, Fight of the night for me was Allen versus Fisher. I thought Allen won. You're not alone in that, Adrian. I think everybody really thought Allen won. I think even Johnny Fisher, who I've not heard a statement from. I mean, Jimmy and Mark Tibbs are good friends of mine, so I could call them and talk to them off the record about the fight, and I think they would be honest with me about what they thought of it. But I get the impression Johnny Fisher probably feels that Dave Allen won that fight. Really, Raymond Hales thinks so. Says yes, same here, Adrian. By the way, I'm the guy that worked at Maryhill. Oh yeah, because you guys knew each other from Dudley, I believe. Which was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I was skeptical that Dave Allen was going to bring much to the table, despite hearing all the noises that he was very motivated and he was coming to upset the apple cart. But, he was as good as his word, and you've got to feel for Dave Allen because the one thing I will say, which is a positive, which Johnny Fisher can take from it, is Johnny Fisher had a serious chin check and a serious gut check last night. And I think he passed both of those tests. He didn't win the fight, I don't think. But he could still take some enormous positives from that because he wasn't that shell-shocked prospect who was drowned in deep waters by the old veteran. Dave shook the life out of him, and I think on balance he should have had his hand held up. But Johnny Fisher passed a gut check and a chin check. He got off the deck and he came back blasting. So, in terms of a character test, what's not to love? Johnny Fisher can learn from that, and he can become a better fighter from it. Do you think he should have a rematch with Dave Allen? I don't know. So here's my take. My just gut feeling. Ben Whittaker needs to get back in the ring with Liam Cameron. I feel that is absolutely appropriate. And if he doesn't, I think it will reflect badly on him. And he said he went missing for a while, Ben Whittaker, but he's resurfaced recently and he said he does want that rematch and he's not going to circumvent it. And I don't think he should. With Dave Allen, I would not advise him to take a rematch immediately. With Johnny Fisher, I would not advise him to take an immediate rematch with Dave Allen. That's just my gut feeling on it. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. Johnny Fisher trains at the Origin Gym in Raynham. Exactly that, Kung. I've been there, if not many a time. I've been there several times. I go there often to catch up with Jimmy. Jimmy is a good friend of mine. We like to have a coffee and talk boxing. We like to talk inevitably about the old days. He's older than I am, but we can talk about the history of the game. And I think he relates to that easier than he does half of the fighters today, and not just the fighters today, but the kind of culture and shenanigans of today. I think he's part of it. He's still in it, But I think obviously people tend to have more of an emotional attachment to their own era, don't they? And Jimmy's no different. Are there any other talking points from last night that you guys would like to address? Thoughts on Johnny's ceiling? Okay, Raymond. Here's the thing, right? I don't see a world class talent. Whereas I look at Moses Aitama and I say that is a world class talent, unless somebody knows something we don't, and he's found wanting when he finds himself in deep waters or gets hit on the chin or made to take a few steps back. Then I believe Moses Aitama is a world class talent. I do not believe Johnny Fisher is fundamentally a bona fide world class talent. Having said that, he can be British heavyweight champion. He can be Commonwealth champion. He can improve. He's only relatively young, Johnny Fisher. He's a smart guy. I think he's a humble guy, and at least we know he's not. We know he's not chinny, and we know he's got balls. So I don't see the ceiling is not the ceiling for me. I think there's a limit before he hits the ceiling or the pinnacle or the mountaintop. That's what I think about Johnny Fisher. With all due respect to Johnny, who's a lovely guy, and my two good friends who work with him. The Channel 4 documentary. Did you watch Fighters? Yeah, are you talking about? Was it on Channel 4 back in the day, Kung? Because it was a documentary by Ron Peck, shot in the early '90s, like literally like 1990, 1991, and it was centered around West Ham Canning Town fighters out of the Peacock Gym and the Royal Oak in Canning Town, where Terry Lawless had his legendary stable. On the Barking Road, and Jimmy Tibbs was in it. Mark Kaler was in it. Who else was in it? Mark Tibbs was in it. There was two. There was the documentary called Fighters, which was about Jason Rowland was another guy that was featured. That was interesting. And then, did you see the spin-off, Real Money, that they did, where they kind of did a? I don't know if they ad libbed it to a degree and went off script a lot, or whether it was quite heavily. I don't. I think they went off script a lot and just went with the organic feel of the scenes, which is sometimes a directorial technique when you make movies. And that was really good. I thought. I thought Jimmy Flint and Jimmy Tibbs were both brilliant in it. I mean, Jimmy Flint is a good actor anyway, and he has a bit of a background and a bit of training. But Jimmy Tibbs, considering he's had no formal training as an actor at all, I thought Jimmy was brilliant. He was really playing that character he used to be when he was younger, because he was full of menace and he just played a great role. I thought Jimmy perhaps could have been a great actor if his life had gone in another direction. But listen, guys, if you've never seen it, that recommendation from Kung Kao, Fighters, um, by Ron Peck, and look for Real Money, which is a kind of dramatized spin-off featuring the same characters. They're both really decent. I'm gonna have to find out where to get it from, because you can't get it on YouTube. I've got a DVD somewhere in this flat, but when you put things in boxes and you can't find them anymore, it's that kind of thing. I had it for sure at one point, and I need to find it again. My friend David Stewart, who lives up the road, and he was a former British lightweight title challenger and a distinguished amateur of note for the sometime for the legendary Repton Boxing Club. That is his favourite boxing documentary ever, Fighters. He just says, "Don't you just think that is the best thing ever?" And it's up there. It's up there. I think it was Channel 4, yeah. Do you ever watch Raging Bullock, the one about BBC Three documentary about a Lynn ABC amateur? I didn't see it. No, I didn't see it. You saw Real Money. I can see you responding to that. I didn't see that, but maybe I could Google that and find some information about it. There's been a few good documentaries. A really good documentary. See, I like this because we can go off. We can go way off script, off topic, and just talk boxing. The really good documentary is called The Match. It was this thing about Mickey Duff called The Matchmaker. It was on YouTube until a few years ago with a very misleading title. It was called Muhammad Ali and Other Boxing Celebrities, which I guess they were just looking for it to get the hits, which I get that, but it was really the wrong title to give it. It's basically a documentary, a worm's eye view of a fly on the walls view of a week or two in the life of Mickey Duff when he's trying to find a substitute opponent for John Conte for a big show at Wembley. He's got Jimmy Batten on it, in a British title fight, I believe. May have been his fight with Can't think at the minute, but it will come to me. Tony Paul, I think it may have been that one. But John Conte fights a guy called Leonardo Roger on it. You know, but it's a great documentary. It shows Mickey doing deals with guys like Gil Clancy. You know, it shows him talking to Harry Levine. It features John Conte. It features Jimmy Batten, and then at the end of it, they go out to New Orleans to watch Muhammad Ali regain the World Heavyweight Championship for an unprecedented third time in the rematch against Leon Spinks. And it shows you their interaction at ringside and everything. You know, at some point, somebody calls Muhammad Ali a bum, and Mickey Duff is like, Muhammad Ali may be many things, but I can assure you he's not a bum. What does Concau say? Late joining, by the way, Julian McGowan. How is Terrell getting on, Bruce? Yeah, I'd like to get Tyrell Biggs on this show. I had Oliver McCall on recently. That was pretty cool. I would love to get Tyrell Biggs on. Tony Tubbs would be another good one. Yes, I think I saw Mickey Duff documentary. It was around the time Ali fought Spinks. You've already nailed it. You're clearly a connoisseur and an aficionado, Kung, because you preempted me before I read your comment. You preempted me that it was exactly that. You know what else is good? And you can get this on YouTube. You can watch it tonight if you've got half an hour and you want something to watch. All in a Day. It's about the day of the Joe Bugner, Joe Frazier non-title fight in 1973. Imagine that today, by the way. Can you imagine Bugner and Fraser not being billed for some kind of paper championship? You know, it's inconceivable, isn't it? That was just an international heavyweight contest over, I believe it was a 12 rounder. It might have been 10. I need to check that. I feel embarrassed for not knowing. But if you want to watch a great documentary that's only about half an hour long, it's called All in a Day, and it doesn't show any of the fight. It just shows the build up, the day of the fight, and including Jarvis Astaire doing his bits of wheeling and dealing with people and journalists and ticket demands and all the rest of it. And then you've got the aftermath where they're both exhausted, bruised, and they're lying on rub down tables. You know, obviously it focuses on Fraser and Yancey Durham and all the rest of it. It's a great documentary. Yeah, it's great seeing it. I think, says Julian. I remember Bugler doing something in his hotel room. Exactly that. Yeah, you've seen it. It's Andy Smith, isn't it? He's with Andy Smith, who was, you know, Dave Boy Green's trainer and Robert Smith's dad. Mr. Smith used to train Joe Bugner and Dave Boy Green, and his son Robert Smith is now the General Secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control, and he fought Lloyd Hunningham back in the day as well. Celebrate the modern day boxers, said Andy Woollett. Is Andy Woollett any relation to Spud Woollett, or is it actually Spud Woollett who was on the show on Friday night? That's what I want to know. Is that just a coincidence, that name, or am I actually talking to Spud Woollett? Yes, it was at Earl's Court, Julian. Shall we get back at Usyk? Yeah. Shall we get back on track? Is it? I think I've said most of what I want to say. The AI. Talk to me. Does AI have a future? Because I don't want to. I don't want to knee jerk, and I don't want to dismiss something without due thought and consideration. It's Spud. Cool. Good to see you, mate. I'm glad I didn't just dismiss this guy with no profile picture saying, oh, shut up, because I realised I'm talking to my mate Spud. I did my due diligence. It was kind of obvious, let's be honest. Doesn't make me Columbo, does it? I don't want to dismiss something, fellas, out of hand without giving it some proper consideration. Just because the AI came up with a really wide margin for what a lot of people were divided on. I'll say a lot of people perceived it as a close fight. In actual fact, a lot of people perceived it one way or the other way. Is what I've seen on social media today. But so just because the AI didn't seem to have a blinder of a night last night because it scored it 118-12 for Usyk, which most of us are thinking doesn't sound right. Does AI have a future? For me to have any comment on it, that's why I'm asking you. For me to have a comment on it, I'd have to know what the parameters were. I'd have to know how it works. I've got no idea how AI judges a fight and what information it's been fed and what it is calculating on the basis of. I don't know. What do you feel about AI? It must require human input, surely. I mean, and obviously AI doesn't happen without human input. What do you guys know about AI? Because it's moving very fast. I know that. And these days, when people Google something, half the time they rely on the AI response to it rather than a more what you might consider a more credible source. But I'll tell you this: when my friend Andy Watts first showed me AI and how it worked, my first introduction to the whole concept was post-workout coffee, and he said, it'll write you a letter, right? Or it'll write you a guest bill. What style? Think of a writer you want it written in the style of." And I said, "Okay, write a guest bill in the style of Oscar Wilde." And it did it. I wish I could remember some lines for you, but unfortunately I can't, so I'm not going to attempt them. But there was this really Wildean, elaborate, ornate, indulgent, effete language asking for the gas bill. It made the gift of gas or electricity seem like the most wondrous, ethereal gift known to our species. And I was like, that's pretty impressive. This gas bill has been written in the style of Oscar Wilde. So if it's that good, maybe it can judge fights. Maybe it can approximate, a really wise old head like Harold Lederman, for instance. Although I've got to be honest with you, I wasn't actually the biggest fan of Harold Lederman. Sometimes you get these sacred cows, right, fellas? Yeah. Like Burt Randolph Sugar or Harold Lederman, they're supposed to be the standard bearer for some particular thing, whether it's a pundit, a ring editor, or a judge. And I actually don't always think, I'm not always blown away by them. Um, AI will be so advanced, I'll be interested to see the working, says Julian. Me too, Julian. Therefore, it's open to mistakes. I had it 7-5 for Usyk, says Julian McGowan. Fury was so off with his timing in most rounds. This is the thing, right, Julian? I watched first 4 rounds again today because that was all I had time to watch. And Usyk was blocking a lot of shots. Usyk, he's got that tight guard where he puts his hands up, right? And he moves his head and keeps his hands up at the same time, right? A lot of the time. And he was blocking stuff. Fury was busier, we know that, and the punch stats support that. But according to those punch stats, which I don't trust with my life, it's not a hill I will die on. But the punch stats seem to indicate that the volume came from Fury, but the accuracy came from Usyk. I've said it before at the top of the show. Usyk was the puncher last night, just like he was the puncher in the first fight. So that, when people talk about size and how much it matters and how much a weight advantage matters, is it a weight advantage? That is quite a telling factor that the only person who seemed dangerous with his power in either fight was Usyk. And Fury always looked mindful and wary of that power whenever he got touched by him. I think Al Bernstein was involved in the introduction of CompuBox. That makes sense. That rings a bell. What else we got? Me too, Julian. He was hitting a lot of gloves. He was hitting a lot of gloves. Is it any wonder we complain? Says Spud. Julian says, look at Fury's jab stats. He was throwing a lot of jabs, wasn't he, Julian? He was tripling up the jab at times. But I'm guessing you're going to tell me because I sort of looked at them. I glance at these things. I don't study them, to be honest with you. But as far as punch stats go, but you're saying that most of those jabs didn't land according to the CompuBox arbiters, yeah. About judges, they are paid from the promoter. Yeah, I mean, promoter. Clear this up for me, Spud. Promoters pay the judges, don't they, on these big shows? They do, and that is because somebody said, "Aren't they paid by the sanctioning body? Aren't they paid by the board of control?" But they're not. I believe the promoter pays them. But in round one, he threw 19 jabs, landed one. Lazy jabs, not fully closed fists. No, and he was flicking them from the hip, right? Because some people find it easier to land a jab from there. Some people think they can hit you with a jab easier if they're draping that lead arm. This can't really show you on the thing. And they bring it up from here, But yeah, it all needs thinking about. Ben, but thoughts on Fury's weight? Why gain weight and then not attempt to use it? Yeah, I thought he stood his ground more and was more conscious of avoiding the ropes, Raymond, this time. But he went forward some of the time, but he was still moving backwards plenty in the fight and giving ground and maybe inviting the pressure to an extent, But the weight, if you'd have watched the TNT coverage as I did, as I said earlier, then you'd see the dismay of Steve Bunce and Carl Frampton when they saw how big he looked. Just how he looked comical in those shorts. I quipped on Facebook. I wonder what size chest those shorts are. 'Cause they were high, weren't they? It was a high waisted look. But the weight, he probably should have been lighter. Usyk didn't need to come in at that kind of weight, did he? The risk of citing a spurious argument. Frank Greaves certainly believes he shouldn't have been a heavy. I've spoke to him on a podcast before this started. Boxing has ebbs and flows. How AI can gauge the change of momentum in a fight. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it at all. I am not comfortable with it at all. Don't get me wrong, Adrian. Not we have a problem with judging. We have a major cultural problem in boxing with judging. It is not satisfactory right now, and I suppose it never has been. But I am at the moment. I want a lot more information about the AI process. If somebody can explain it to me and bring me into the procedure so I understand it, then I can maybe offer some more useful insights. Federico says judges will have the implicit bias to promotion that gives them the best hotel and expensive budget. Is human nature. It is human nature. It's the same as when you know somebody. It's a nightmare judging. I've done a bit of white collar reffing, right, and judging. And when you know people, it's a burden. It just is. It's not the same as that brings me to another interesting point, by the way. Talking about being neutral, unbiased, and detached, and not influenced by factors externally, which ideally wouldn't influence you. Barry Jones says, when everybody says, I thought last night, I thought this, but I watched it this morning with the sound off, or, I was in the pub last night, but whereas I watched it today in my front room and I had it X and Y for such and such. Barry Jones said, forget all this. I rescored it. He says the only score that matters is your organic, real, live score when you are watching that fight in the moment, and it's not history yet. He says you can never score a fight again, knowing the result and knowing what happened and knowing certain people's reactions and knowing the kind of backlash there might have been against the verdict. He says forget it. If you're not going to judge it while it's happening, then don't score it at all. Which I don't quite agree with that, or I could certainly raise arguments against it, but it's an interesting point, isn't it? The shirts were obscene. What are we talking about, the shirts? Where are we getting to with the shirts, Julian? What's the promoter? Holyfield Lewis won. Yeah, I mean, that was a joke of a verdict. Of course it was, I mean, it was Holyfield Lewis won. That was legitimately called a robbery on the front of the New York Post, I believe, or the New York Daily News, one of them. And it was, and famously they had that Eugenia Williams, who I think there's always a tendency to blame it on somebody being a woman and assuming that she must be unqualified because, it was a PR disaster for equal rights and a lack of misogyny in boxing. Because remember, it was 25 years ago as well, when obviously females are all over the game and prominent now. But back then in 1999, they weren't. And that was a bit of a PR disaster for any kind of female cause in boxing that Eugenia Williams scored the fight the way she did on that particular night. I feel Daniel Dubois is sleeping on Parker. Parker outpoints him. Yeah, well, I said that maybe it was before you arrived, Raymond, but he hasn't dealt. Never mind an Alexander Usyk rematch. Daniel Dubois has not dealt with Joseph Parker yet, who's a very good fighter, very smart guy. Seems to be experiencing an Indian summer in his career and a purple patch of form. So I mean, I don't know what your predictions are there, but do you fancy Daniel Dubois to take care of business against Parker, or do you think Parker will upset the apple cart? I can't recall having looked at the odds, although I will do tonight. Now I've reminded myself. Ironically, the second fight could have been a draw. You know what? See, this is the other thing. Talking about live scores and being influenced by people's reactions. Following on from that, Kung, if people think a guy was shafted in the first fight and that becomes a folkloric and a part of the landscape and becomes opinion, then there's this possibility that you're going to give him a squeeze if it's close in the next fight, because that's what people say. Lewis won the first fight out of sight and the draw was an absolute liberty. And then people say, you know what, Holyfield might have won the second fight, but he was never going to get it because he already had the kind of bad PR effect of having been perceived to be the recipient of a robbery the first time. That's a thing, as well as the when a guy does better than you imagine he's going to do. Sometimes people think he was robbed. Floyd Mayweather versus Marcus Maidana won, for me, is the prototypical example of people deciding someone was robbed just because he did appreciably better than they thought he would. Maidana did not beat Floyd Mayweather either time. The ubiquitous Barry Jones, yes, indeed. Barry Jones does well. He really walks that line of the media kind of shark-infested waters because he was with Warren a while ago. With TNT Sports, or it was BT Sport as it was known at the time. Then he stopped being part of the Warren organisation for whatever reason. Next thing you know, Barry's all over his own. But Barry is a good hustler, and he needs to be because that's how he makes his living. And fighters, just because he's a former world champion, fighters don't make life-changing money as often as not, or certainly not money that's going to look after them in their retirement when they get, when they get put out to the pasture. So Barry needs to make money to support his family and ensure their futures. And it couldn't happen to a nicer fella, to be honest with you. Barry is a great guy. I mean, he wouldn't appreciate this praise because he's a man's man and it'd probably make him feel a bit embarrassed. But Barry, is one of the people in boxing I truly like and admire. Got to tell you that. Parker is 7-10 across the board. Yeah. It's an interesting fight, Julian. I'm looking forward to that February 22nd card. I must admit it. And it's one of those fights I prefer to defer my prediction on rather than make one at this particular stage. I want to see more of Ajit Caballel. He could provide a challenge for Caballel. That name keeps coming up. Bacoli and Caballel are the heirs apparent and the danger men, right? They are the danger men of the division, who are getting a lot of love from the fans. And people want to see them get their opportunities. I think that there will be a change in the guard soon because I don't think Alexander Usyk is going to be around for much longer. Barry is still also on Channel 5 cards. A very good point. Like I say, Barry hustles well. He was. And the other thing I appreciate about Barry is whenever there was an opportunity coming up somewhere, he would always put me up for it. It never took root. I never got any of the opportunities, but they needed a commentator a few years ago, last minute, because somebody couldn't do it. And it was for live in the studio job. And he put my name up for it. He gave him a list of names, and my name was one of the names on the list. So I gotta respect a guy like Gary who do something like that. And he will always help you if he can. If you're a boxing person, Barry will help you out. Not at his own expense because that's just the game, isn't it? But Dubois, KO's Parker. Seriously, would how long will they hold Otama back? Well, the thing about that, Spud, is that I think Otama is a dilemma right now because they can't hold him back for much longer, but he does need a little bit more experience, no doubt. But he's almost too good for his own good, Moses Otama, because he's laying waste guys like Dempsey McKean, who you might generously call a fringe contender. So what do they do with Itama right now, bearing in mind he's only 19, when they need to marinate him for a bit longer, they need to build him for a bit longer, they need to season him for a bit longer. But when he's laying waste to people in that kind of impressive fashion, and some people, he's the kind of fighter that you can make bold predictions about and say, you know what, I think he could beat Dylan White now, or I think he could beat Fabio Wardley now, or, I certainly think Frank Greaves was of that opinion when we spoke about an hour ago, that he thinks that if Otama fought Fabio Wardley, who is currently the British and Commonwealth heavyweight champion, then I think I get the impression Frank thinks Otama would win. So it's going to be interesting to see how they hold that particular hot potato in 2025. But I've got to tell you, that's my favourite British fighter right now. The one that actually excites me and gives me a buzz is Moses Otama. What's Adrian saying? This is what gives boxing such everlasting appeal. The fact that we're talking about fights that happened 25 years ago. I bet everyone in here can remember those nights like they were yesterday. And, we can. And I don't know if you ever went to the closed circuit showings, Adrian, but certainly for 3 years on the spin, Hagler Hearns in 85, Hagler Mugabe in 86, and Hagler Leonard in 87, I watched them with my father at the Leicester Square Odeon. That was immense. It's a shame they don't bring that back. Maybe I could hire a cinema in Soho for like a private party for some of us, where we'll get the closed circuit, we'll get the pay-per-view, and we'll hold it at a cinema and try and recreate that vibe. Because I get why it's not practical to do it now, because we've all got the big flat screens in our own homes in most cases, and we've all got either a Fire Stick or legitimate platforms or both. But going to watch a big fight in the 1980s at the cinema was off the hook. It really was. What's I'd say? Barry Jones is superb indeed. Yeah, indeed. Convinced he's going to the top. You're talking about a timer now, yeah? I'm following this thread. Moses might be ready now. He's a Benitez Tyson type. I think that's a good. It's a good comparison, Julian. You know, Dean Marshall. I've seen a Tamer and Francis Warren saying they want Hergovich next in an interview. Some step up that would be, and it would be. But you know, but you wouldn't bet against him, would you? Or you wouldn't bet. You wouldn't bet too much against him. Could be they were saying he could potentially break Patterson and Tyson's records. Yeah, but you know what? If he wants to break it, beat the heavyweight champion of the world. Don't even if he beat Daniel Dubois tomorrow, it wouldn't mean anything to me. And anybody who tried to get in my face with those statistics that he's the youngest anything could just about fuck off. To be honest with you, I'm not sure if it hurts my traction or adds suitability on here using curse words. I probably shouldn't because sometimes the algorithm will pick a curse up. And the next thing you know, your monetization is limited. Not that we are making a king's ransom exactly from this channel as things stand, but you know what? I really appreciate you guys because you make it easy to talk to the camera for an hour, which we've been doing at this point because you keep me going. If this was just an address that someone said no one's going to watch it till later, Ben, you've just got to record it. I couldn't do it. So what am I saying? I couldn't do it without you. I was going to get out of here. Refrain from the profane, says Kung Kao. Yeah, makes it more professional. You're right. You are right. Sometimes I think it gives it the common man's touch, but since when have I wanted to be confused with that particular demographic? Never. That's when. Guys, thank you for joining me. It's a shame Gary didn't make it, but perhaps there was a reason why he couldn't make it and shouldn't make it. Please subscribe if you haven't already done it, but I'm 100% confident that everybody I'm talking to right now has already subscribed. Of that, I have no doubt. You know, let's just try and get the subscriber base is growing. Let's hit 2,000 next. Leave comments. You've left lots of comments here, but if you want to leave a comment and like on the video once it uploads to the live category, that also helps it because all these comments they're ephemeral. They don't stay on the video once it's gone into the back catalogue. Then we have to start again and we get whatever comments we get. Help a brother out. In the meantime, be lucky. Keep punching.